Today's presentations are part of our Mike Denker Fellowship. Mike Denker was a beloved and cherished early member of this chapter. He was really the gas on which this chapter ran for a number of years, he and Chris Manson and a few other people. We lost Mike a few years ago to cancer, and the way that we in the chapter decided that we could honor him was to think about what a terrific, natural, instinctive teacher he was, and how many people he brought into the chapter for us, just by his very nature, just by the way that he would get into conversations with people and start teaching them about printing. And so we have been sponsoring young people, students, as members of APHA and of the chapter, and encouraging them to participate in stuff with us. And then we ask this tiny little payback that they give us a presentation at the end of the year. I'm going to be talking with our three this year, two of whom are here to talk to us today, about ways that we can sort of strengthen that bond in going forward, ways that we can reach out a little bit better and make it a little bit easier for them to actually do stuff with us. So without too much further ado, I do want to thank Mr. Diminution, who walks in on cue. Well done. And Stephanie Stillo and the rest of the staff of the Rare Books and Special Collections Division of the Library of Congress for hosting us. We always appreciate the fact that we can treat this room as our living room. And thank you very, very much. And I will, without any further ado, introduce our two of our three Denker Fellows for 2018, Casey Venata and Layla Saad. And Casey's leading off. So have at it.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm Casey Venata. I'm coming from Kutztown University. I am in the CD department, graphic design, senior year, so it's wrapping up. I'm kind of going to start to talk about like how I got into this world. It's really just a world, like it wraps me up in it. I started my first print 10th grade, so I don't know if I was late to the party, early to the party, but it was exciting. This print, the red and black white, was the first print I ever did. I did a series of the colors, and it got displayed at the Harrisburg State Capitol building, which was like, wow, that's really cool that I have that great success for the first print I ever did. So I kind of got hooked, and that's a later edition with the colors. And then I also got introduced to woodcut printing, which was an experience in itself. I don't know how I felt about that. I've only done it a few times since. It was a lot of patience. You learn a lot of patience in this whole art form. And then, I come to college, I'm hooked on letterpress printmaking, and I have a class with Ann Lemon, have to give a little shout out, and I did a lot of projects that I can wrap into graphic design and use in my projects. So you see that I have the ampersand letterpress I use for packaging. I was really just trying to always touch art, like fine art forms in my projects as much as possible. So there's the one design I did, and then I also did an entire children's book, all of lino cuts. I thought it was crazy. I think Anne thought I was a little crazy for doing it, but it led to me getting this text over the summer saying, would you like to be the letterpress monitor? And I'm like, sure. She said next year. That gives me great times to learn it because I've only done it once since that. I did happy. I almost didn't even happen because of a family emergency. I missed my training date. It was like so popular. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get a chance to do like letterpress printmaking because it was filled up, but I got another slot. I was so excited. I did happy birthday, day dad on a card. I wish I had a photo. I forgot to take the photo, but it's very treasured. It sits by my parents' TV, and I always see it every time I go home on my first ever happy birthday, day dad print. So I got that text from her, and I'm like, yeah, sure, it'll be great. Little did I know she meant my junior year last year. First week back to school, I had to help teach graduate students. I had no clue what I was doing. I'm like, oh my God. And then I get thrown into teaching. So the first project I did by myself with no help was this 5 lines of text. I was so proud of myself. It only took me like 2.5 hours maybe, only to print it and realize I did it all backwards. Oh man, it was a great learning experience. But which is also from Hedwig and the Angry Inch. I don't know if I have any fans of that musical here. Yeah? So it's from the song. But I gave it to my tattoo artist, and he was very excited because he got me into it. So I just have some other small projects I've tackled throughout the time. During the same time, I'm teaching other students how to do the printmaking process. I'm getting them involved, training them so they can then do it, which I have 2 trainees here that we've got hooked. Makes me so excited. Which is the type that was locked up was the printing here. I did some thank you cards. Christmas tags were one of my favorite things I printed. I actually want to get some soon. They were so fun, such a nice little addition to add to Christmas gifts. During this opportunity, I've loved how many doors have been opened to me through the printmaking world. I get to meet so many people. We did this event last year through our AIGA chapter, and we did Christmas cards for a local nursing home. I did 2 sets of types I locked up, which I think I have a photo. I do not have a photo. That we did. I let the students come in and print them. It was open to anybody. The photo that was in the beginning was a community member of Kutztown. I met several times. He came in, made a couple prints. His wife was very heavily involved in the art department. So it was great to talk to him. And I had students decorate with stamps. That was a freshman last year. And this is more decorated ones. And it was great. We donated over 50 cards. So just great to express the art form and then also donate and help out local communities and just make someone's day brighter. So this first big project I ever did was the Led Zeppelin Stairway to Heaven lyrics. It was a gift to my dad to make up for the last gift that I did to him. There's still a typo in it, but I don't think he ever realized it. I also got to use the process of my lino cut skills and the letterpress printmaking skills, combining them to make this piece. I did 52 prints overall. This is with the proofing press, the lino cut process of how I did that. All the prints. Type lockup, and again the end result I did 2 on blue paper, but because I have the typo on, I'm I can't sell these. That was my goal, so I just have a stack of 49 prints. Maybe I gave a couple out of prints to give to people, but my dad was just as loving and appreciative of this piece as he was the first little happy birthday to Dad. I've done a lot of exploration. I tell students when I teach them, once you know the rules, please break the rules. I want you to explore with how you print make. I want you to just try something new. I don't want you to just do lines of text. And it's been done. Do something different. So I was working, this was one piece I've done myself, but I've worked with students to do more printmaking like this, combining wood block, lead type, seeing what you can make done. That's not that out there, but I let them explore. That was a lockup for part of how that was done. And then this was, you can make out what it's supposed to say, but this was an experimentation of using a proofing press for a big wood block. I should have grabbed a couple of these. I have so many of these. For the F, but then also lining up the text to make it print correctly, but also ombre printing, which is a process in itself, not the correct way to print, but I do it anyway. This is a good show of how I did you can really see the ombre on the letter or type here. Still such a fun process. I encourage everyone to try it because it's so fun, and you only get limited prints before all the colors mash together. And you can kind of see how it prints. It's so pretty. It makes for great Instagram photos. But I think when I did it this way, because you don't want to waste a lot of ink, I only got maybe 25 prints before all the colors started to blend together. So it makes it really limited, but it's so fun. And then you can see just all the prints in itself. I have so many of these, but everyone loves them and gets a laugh out of them. I did another type of ombre printing, not to think I was printing on white coasters, so I had to redo it. And you can see the blue with our Landis Press ornament. And I have a bunch of those coasters. And then my boyfriend decided to help me one day, didn't reach the press out of the clamshell press, but we got this really beautiful back coaster of the ombre coloring. I've also explored a lot with printmaking and the cards, and I did these in both cards and coasters. So you can see the pink ink, black ink. And then I was asked this year, and I also volunteered to do the APHA calendar piece. I did Venus, it's Venus, but Aphrodite, it works together, but the rain coming down, she was the goddess of water. And there was a relation to her in April too, so it was a really fun piece to make. I did it over the summer. I don't have a printing studio. I was not close to Kutztown. So 130 prints takes up a lot of space. You can see the first process. This was then again lino cut for the first step. I don't know if the video is gonna play. No, but I had all over my parents' house. They woke up the next morning and they're what is going on? All over the kitchen table, all over the kitchen counters, on top of the the mic or toaster, all over the couches, TV counter, coffee tables. Are like, what is going on? I'm like, art, mom, art, dad. You support this, don't you? So to kind of wrap it up, I went really fast and I apologize. I thought I had more in here. I'm actually, right now it's really exciting because it is my senior year. I'm thinking about what I'm gonna do after college and what I wanna do when I leave exit and job interview. So I came up with the idea I'm gonna do 2020 calendars because I really enjoyed the process of making the calendars for the APHA ones. I am doing, I think as of right now I have 10 sets I'm doing, and they're gonna be all different colors. I have selected between 3 colors. This is the first month. They're on coasters. And the back piece will then be my logo. I'm going to do a polymer print on the back to show my logo to be a leave away when I leave a job interview. This is a type lockup of what February was. And as of right now, this is February, March. I just started this project. I mean, it's been the head works, but I actually physically started it maybe 4 weeks ago. Yeah, it's really fun. I'm staying between bluish, which a blue, a green, and a pink is my color palette. And I'm just really excited to see what this is. This is like my first big project. I actually have one in my purse if someone wants to see it. But I'm just really excited, and I have to do a little thank you because this opportunity has been such a great door opener. I've met so many amazing people, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I've loved the letterpress print fair. It was so amazing just to go meet other printmakers. I am not afraid to go talk to people now when we have a shared passion because it's such a small niche of a world. And I really do appreciate it. I think it's great. I hope this continues on for many, many years. So thank you. Sorry it was short.
How many ones did you need in that calendar?
13.
13
You know how many type of drawers we have that have 12 twos? None. So there's mostly one is, oh gosh, I can't remember my typeface, but I have 2 of the Chesapeake typeface, and I can't. Bad designer moment, don't hate me on that. I'm very tired. I haven't slept in 90 days. But yeah, it's very stressful. We have a small studio. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Layla. I'm from George Washington University from the Corcoran School of Art and Design. I actually was not into art as a child or a young adult, so I actually only switched over about 6 years ago. Before that, I was in biomechanical engineering and ER surgery. So I actually switched over because a requirement of being in the surgery program is that you have to take a painting class or a ceramics class to hone your fine motor skills for surgery. And I took a ceramics class, and I was like, well, I guess this is where I'm going with this. So at that point, I switched over to art. My parents are extremely supportive, so I've been really appreciative of that. But part of that kind of informs how I look at art and how I explore it. And so I'm really interested in chemistry and the kind of the material exploration of things and how they work. So what is the foundation? Why is it doing this? Which is kind of one of the reasons I'm really interested in printmaking, because there is quite a bit of chemistry involved if you actually think about the processes of it. And then I'm also I'm always questioning the history of intention. And so this plays into kind of one of my interests in printmaking, which is type. And I feel like the history of printmaking is that it was used in many ways to duplicate and replicate images, but also specifically type. And so there have been discussions between me and certain professors and stuff about, maybe I include too much text in my work. And for me, that's part of what printmaking is to me personally. So, and this is not Carrie. Carrie is awesome. She always encourages my projects, so it's not her. So I'm also working at the Renwick Gallery at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. I'm an exhibit specialist, and I think that's really interesting because we don't often get printmaking, and I know that it's a fine art and not a craft. And part of me has started questioning that with some of the curators, why is this not included as a craft? Because I believe it still is a craft, And obviously the delineation between fine art and craft is so arbitrary anyway. And I'm also primarily interested in installation art, wood sculpture, ceramics, and printmaking. Printmaking is my primary 2D medium, and then I also do a lot of graphic design. So, as I mentioned before, type in printmaking to me is part of the essence of printmaking. And so for me, it's hard to dissociate them, and I think probably about 70% of my print work and probably around 45 or 50% of my work overall contains some sort of lettering in it. And I'm always kind of thinking about how I can integrate type into design, but also how I can incorporate design into type. And both of them are, they're both valid kind of, like, it's not just black and white, it's also white and black, like that kind of theory. And so discovering William Blake's printmaking has been like super interesting. And it's actually a really funny story because I had just begun, I think this was like after I did my first printmaking class ever. And my mom sent me a Wikipedia article on William Blake's pieces, All Religions Are One. I believe that's like a 2-part edition. And so she was like, have you seen this? And I was like, oh, what is it? And she was like, this is really interesting the way he does it. He doesn't use, he doesn't use a letterpress. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, he just wrote it backwards, duh, right? And I was like, it's so obvious because I was telling Carrie, but like, I don't have an issue writing backwards or reading backwards or upside down. Like, this is not something that ever kind of, and it was only like a year and a half later that my mom was like, no, you do realize that like most people can't just write backwards, right? And at that point, I was like, oh no, what? And because like I'd been doing it all my life. And so I went back and I looked at the article. Well, it's super interesting. But in July of 2013, that Wikipedia article, somebody had removed the line from down at the bottom. They gave the 2 theories of how he wrote backwards or how he got his type on there. So I was like, wow, this is like a mystery of the 21st century. And so I was like, I'm gonna do all this research and find out how he did this. Well, so 2 years later, I had this renewed interest in what he was doing, and I did a whole bunch of research on it, and I could not find anything, because while there is amazing research on it, which I discovered later, it's very hard to search on the internet. And so the only thing that I ever found on JSTOR was William Blake's Printmaking Process in Jerusalem by Stephen Carr, and this is more about like his iconography and how he got to that point, but he doesn't really talk about process. He like touches on it just enough to make me like hunger for it more, but not actually give me anything. So I was like, this is really frustrating. So this is an example of the etching that I did that was backwards. So like it was just like something that I did. So I didn't realize it was like not intuitive. So Carrie was super awesome, and I was actually talking to her about like a week ago, and she was like, oh yeah, I think they have like this thing at the Library of Congress in the rare book collection, Michael Phillips, that he did like all this research. And I was like, oh, really? I should go look at that. And so Stephanie was super awesome, and she pulled out all of their stuff for me to look at. And I was like, wow, there is no mystery to this. They've already figured the whole thing out. So it was like both an amazing moment that all like these 3 years of me wondering how he did it were finally revealed. And then I was like, wow, I have like no research topic anymore because it's already been researched. So I was like, wow. So anyway, I looked at his stuff, and Michael Phillips did an amazing job like going into detailing everything, collecting like things that were published at the time that were kind of exploring Blake's process, and also he like went the full mile and did like the replica, and he got all of the historic paper like duplicated and all of these things. And so according to him, the process is that William Blake wrote backwards using a stop-out varnish onto the copper plates. And then he did 2 acid dips. So he put it in the acid until it was 0.05 millimeters eaten away, and he would pull it out and check if anything was getting an underbite on it, on the words. And then he would use the stop-out varnish to like stop out any delicate areas, and then he'd put it back in the acid so that it would go like for an end result of 0.12 millimeters. And so then he inked it up using a leather dauber because rollers were not yet available, and his evidence for this is that it has like this textured effect that you can get when you're doing it with the leather dauber that is evident in the prints. And that he used wet paper because this was like obviously common practice back then, but also because when it shrinks afterwards, it sharpens the image, which was something that was really interesting to me because I noticed that there were certain areas that were very sharp and certain areas that are relatively soft in some of Blake's prints. And I was wondering how he got that contrast. And so that was really interesting to me that it was specifically because it dries, it sharpens certain parts of the image. And then Blake usually had them colored in after he was done, and it would either be that he and sometimes his wife would be watercoloring it, or he would use this glue-based pigments, which I had never heard of that method before, where he would put a glue-based pigment after he printed it, and then he would register the print in the paper, and he would print it, and then I guess when the glue like pulls off, it creates this like mottled effect or something. Yeah, I mean, maybe you have more information about that.
No, I have always wondered what that mottled effect is.
Yeah, so I'm super interested now. Like, I really want to try this, and I'm really interested in like all his whole process. But I would really love to specifically try that. And so there was a book written, a treatise on wood engraving by John Jackson, which Phillips references in many of his lectures and writings. But I also went and I got this treatise and I read what Jackson was saying about Blake, and he basically says it's like a necessarily slow process because he has to like, you know, use the dabber by hand and like do the whole thing and be really careful about it and then clean it. And there was an implication in both one of Phillips' lectures that he thinks that Jackson was saying that the process wasn't innovative, but also like some of the wording in the actual treatise was kind of touching on this idea that it wasn't innovative. And I kind of think that that's an interesting interpretation of innovation, because I think we often get stuck in the idea that something's more efficient and then it's innovative, but I think like Blake's process was very innovative. It just wasn't necessarily faster, but that's fine. And then I just like put a note here that the support of the reverse writing theory mainly comes from the fact that if you look at William Blake's work, if you look from the beginning ones to the later ones, like it gets progressively smoother, the writing. And then also some of the examples that were included in like the many portfolios that I looked at were talking about how like some of the early works had the wrong tilt direction, which would kind of imply that if he wasn't, you know, trained really a lot in writing backwards, this would kind of be a result. It is kind of important to know, which I saw like in a few different places, that it's not unheard of to write backwards. Obviously, that's how they would sign their work. The engravers would sign their work by writing backwards. It's just like writing a whole paragraph or something backwards wasn't really done. And then also the last thing was kind of that there were some manuscripts that like before he actually made the design, the manuscripts with the actual songs on them, some of them had practice in the margins where they were written backwards. So that was, again, another thing that was supporting the idea that he wrote it backwards. So like the last thing that I was thinking about was kind of what are possible alternatives to the process, and I obviously like am nowhere close to Michael Phillips like in terms of researching this, but I was like wondering if there was a possibility that Blake could have inked a flat surface and then put the flat surface on. So they didn't have a roller, but theoretically if you put it on, let's say like a piece of paper and then press it against the plate, would that not transfer the ink onto the plate? Because he was talking about how like it took him between 45 minutes and an hour to ink up each one of those tiny little plates every time. And so that's like a lot of time, and I understand that obviously some people will do that time commitment, but it's kind of interesting to think about the idea, and maybe that's not even related to Blake, but like going forward, it would be interesting to think about this way of inking something up. And then the other thing that I was wondering is like, is there any possibility that he actually coated the plate with the varnish and then scraped away whatever he didn't want instead of like applying it backwards? And the only reason that I'm curious about this is just because some of those, like, and you can see them over there, some of them have such tiny text, you know, and obviously you can write that way, especially with a calligrapher's pen. Like I do calligraphy all the time, and you can get very small. But also the stop-out varnish, and obviously that would depend highly on what the actual formula that he was using was. But I've tried it with like asphaltum, and I've tried it with like a few different things, and trying to get that kind of level of detail, even though I write like that with ink, is pretty hard. So I'm curious if there was another way that he did it without handwriting it. And then also, so when I mentioned the fact that the Wikipedia page had the 2 lines taken off the bottom, the second line was that there is a theory that he wrote on like some sort of a parchment, and then he wrote normally on the parchment, and then he flipped it over and put it on the plate, and then that's like how he transferred the resist onto it, which is funny because I was just telling Carrie that I was like, I wonder if that's how he did it the other day, and then I went and I found the Wikipedia page again, and I was like, what? and apparently somebody had added the lines back, and I went back on the Wayback Machine. I'm like, I managed to find the 1 month that somebody had taken off the really important parts, and I was like, I don't understand how this is possible. But that was kind of interesting, and that's been an interesting experiment. So that's kind of all I have. Stephanie was super awesome, and she pulled out some of the examples of the replicas over there. And then I just brought a couple examples of the work that I was doing. And part of that, like when I'm thinking about innovation, is the collograph. I took a collograph class with Carrie, and so I'm really interested in all the alternative processes, like silk organza, paper plates, things like that. So, yes. If anybody has any questions, let me know. Thank you.
I have a question. Are those to scale? For the original?
So for the William Blake, yes, yeah,
That's how small they
absolutely.
were.
The Songs of Innocence and Experience, which is what we have here, was a smaller work. Now he did his illustrated epics get bigger, but he was working with better commissions at that point. So this is still sort of an earlier work, so it's a bit smaller. There is no natural religion, which she mentioned earlier, is quite small because it was his first work using this process.
He uses photographs to transfer the image to his work, so
Oh yeah,
it's a direct copy off of
Yes.
Blake, whatever size the Blake is.
Right. Oh, my toast is,
I was just going to add a comment because you were talking about, Layla, alternative ideas for transferring and in terms of etching. You can take a photocopy, drench it in lacquer thinner, run it through the etching press, and then that will act as a resist when you drop it in acid. So that's kind of the modern day version of that.
So it's kind of like letraset in a way. Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
It sticks on the plate?
Yeah, so you're stripping the toner off, and the toner then acts like the resist.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's persnickety. It takes a lot of like playing around with the pressure and all of that, but it can be done. Yeah.
We've had people make that. You can also just use that for like jewelry making. If you want to like transfer text or an image onto copper and just etch it away.
Yep, that makes sense.
But yeah, especially we have trouble here because our mail gets irradiated when it comes into the building. But now that I'm thinking about it, that's a very part of that substance that causes the catalogs to stick together is what you're talking about. It's very strong actually.
Yeah.
So I can see it if it
Yeah.
dilutes it and causes it to adhere, that it's not going to go anywhere.
I haven't done it in a long time, but if you want to try it out, Layla, I'm welcome to go down that avenue with you.
Open all the
Rabbits.
Rabbit.
I mean, you could create folds and text and stuff. I mean, you could do some cool stuff with it.
Yeah, you can do a lot with text, so that it speeds it up. Yeah.
Not to mention forgery. Just saying.
No, there.
So Layla, do you see Blake and his process sort of informing your own process moving forward, or did he inspire you to maybe try? I mean, you sort of suggested this, but to maybe dip your sort of hands in other
Absolutely.
things.
Like, yeah, I'm very interested in his entire process, but I'm also kind of mostly interested in the way he thought about things and the way he was just like, and there's varying theories on why he did it. Was it because of cost, that he didn't want to have to go through all this process? Was it because he didn't like the fact that everything was segmented in like the artist and then the engraver and then the printmaker that did the type? But for me, I think it's like not necessarily irrelevant, but to me the main interest is like, well, he created something interesting and different, and he decided to do it his own way. So yeah, I mean, I would like to for sure try that glue-based pigment thing, and I definitely want to do some relief etchings, which I haven't done before. So.
Make sure you send us pictures.
Thank you. Yes, I will.
We'll add it to the archive.
Yeah.
I can only encourage you to make coasters.
I have so many coasters. If you ever need any coasters, I have.
Have you seen the Peter Koch coasters from Hormone? His side press is called Hormone Derange.
It's good start for me like
And he makes beer coasters, and he appropriates old cartouches and dingbats and whatnot from newspapers, from Western newspapers like buckaroo cowboys and lassos, and they all read, they have bold type that say things like "lead ain't dead," and they're really fantastic.
Yeah, like it's like this is a thing that sells, but like I can't get myself to like get rid of them. Yeah, like they're my babies. And I'm just like hoarding them in my apartment right now. But
Well, you obviously have an ear for humor. You should definitely do it. I would definitely encourage you to
yeah,
do that.
thank you. Yeah.
And or Christmas ornaments. I mean, you know, when
It goes both ways.
when your coaster season is done,
Yeah, I gotta finish these calendars
you
first.
just, you know, when the 4th of July passes, you start punching holes.
Yeah, that's why I'm doing 2020 right now. There's no way I'm getting all that done in the movie for next 2019. But yeah, there's an uncensored one, but there is a problem with my flash drive, so we had the censor version. Sorry, disappoint. You figured it out.
Well, thank you both
Yeah.
very
you.
much.
Good stuff.
Absolutely, we appreciate it. These are always one of the high points of the year. We never know what we're going to hear, and you've held that tradition on. Thank you.
And bravo to the fellowship too, I must
Yes,
say.
yeah, thank you
so
guys.
Yes, there are
Oh, yes.
copies of the calendar here.
That has April.
Featuring
March with Anne Lemon.
Oh yeah, March. I marched.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, we're mostly we have mostly contributors here. Chris has a month I didn't
Yes.
cover. So,
No, June.
June.
I think we did,
Do you accept potato prints?
We should. Those are
we
the
are
vibes.
notoriously unfussy.
They're fun.
Witness the fact that I printed the cover.
Next year, George, I'm expecting.
Uh,
Full on month. We've got all those ones, all those twos.
We hope so. Actually, we were talking about that, and one of the reasons that here's Chris's. One of the reasons that we ended up using these beautiful, weird Dutch initials is that among in Roland Hoover's collection of type, which is vast, this is the only initial letter set that we could find that had 3 J's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a struggle. Like, I think I spent maybe 6 hours, 2-hour shifts, just trying to count through all our cases, counting letters, make sure I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the, it was a process. So I found I had to settle. That's why I don't remember the typeface I used, because I had to settle. It was not my first, second, third, or fourth choice.
This is a great example when we teach Gutenberg and we list the number within the sort that
Yeah.
people are always shocked.
Yeah.
And even when you try to explain, well, he's printing 6 pages at a time, that means they're all typeset, that means it's 6 times whatever you would expect. People seem to have trouble, but this is very clear. If you're going to print a calendar, you need so many ones.
Right.
This is a very straightforward way of talking about that.
And you always think, oh, well, sure we have, of course there's enough.
You think
So,
that?
yeah, set the whole calendar in your own.
Well, and there seem to be fonts of these initial letters that they just leave a letter, an infrequently used letter out. So you quite often with initials you don't get an X
Yeah.
or a Z. Yeah.
Like, why bother? We get 24 of the letters.
Yeah.